My name is Connie Armstrong, and I serve as the director of the Oklahoma Center for the Book in the Oklahoma Department of Libraries. Joining me today is Nikki Shannon Smith. Nikki, a native Californian, is an educator having worked both in the classroom and as a principal. She is also an award-winning author of both children and young adult books. Her books include Our Beautiful Colors, Love is All Around, and Charlotte Spies for Justice, a Civil War survivor story. She is here today to discuss her book, Lena and the Burning of Greenwood, a Tulsa race massacre survival story, which won the 2023 Oklahoma Book Award for Young Adult. Nikki, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Connie, for having me.
Uh, for our audience, give us a brief summary of your book. What's it about?
So Lena and the Burning of Greenwood is the story of the beautiful, loving, thriving Black community of Greenwood, which was also known as Black Wall Street, and how it was destroyed by hatred and racism. And it's told through the lens of 12-year-old Lena. And through her eyes, although we do see the events unfold, we also see how love, and hope, and family and strength are the very things that get us through something like this.
So, what was your inspiration for writing the book?
Ultimately, I think my inspiration was the people of Greenwood and their untold story. Many of us, I would even say most of us, don't know the full details about Greenwood and what happened there, everything from its founding all the way to its destruction. And I felt like those people deserved to have their truth told. And I felt like it needed to be told in an honest and loving way. And the truth always, they say it sets us free. And my goal is to tell stories that allow us to see things and process things as young people, especially, and hopefully prevent things like that from happening again.
Right. I noticed in one of your previous interviews about the book, you stated that you weren't really sure if you even wanted to write about the Tulsa race massacre. Why was that, and what changed your mind?
I struggled with the idea quite a bit because of the backdrop being 2020 and 2021, which were difficult times for everyone. I wasn't sure if I had the emotional bandwidth to write the story. So that was one part of my reservations about doing it. And secondly, it was really important to me that this story not be sensationalized in any way. I wanted it to be loving and careful and thoughtful. And so those were my biggest reservations. I changed my mind. Number one, nothing worth doing is ever easy. The hard things are often the most important things. And it was important to me to push through. So I did. And once I made the commitment, one of the first things that happened was I found a quote from one of the survivors. And if you don't mind, I'll read that quote.
I'd love that.
Okay. So the quote does appear in the foreword of the book. And this is from Ernestine Alpha Gibbs, who survived. And she said, maybe if we talk about it enough, it'll never be again. And as soon as I found that, I got chills. And I knew I was doing the right thing.
Yes, you were. Tell us about your main character, Lena. How did you develop Lena's character? And do you identify with her in any way, or in any of the main characters in your other books? Do you identify with them?
I do identify with them. You mentioned that I've been an educator. It's been about 30 years now. So I've been around a lot of children for most of my life. And one thing I've learned about children, and I think even people in general, is we all have the same underlying wants and needs. We want love and friendship and family. We want happiness and acceptance, and we want safety. And so I take those universals, and that's where I start with any character I develop, from the youngest all the way up to the adults in the stories. And then I layer their situation on top of them. And what I often find, in addition to whatever the underlying want is of the character, I always build in this desire to make a difference and to push through and to be strong. And sometimes I'll read a and realize how much of myself I have poured in to those characters and into those scenes. So at that level, I identify with all of the characters. And the lucky thing is I get to make sure they accomplish all of those goals. So
For the young person picking up the story of Lena and the burning of Greenwood, or even the adult who picks up that book and reads it, what would you like that person to take away after reading your book? What lesson would you like them to come away with?
oh, that's a great question, Connie. I would love for young readers to come away with the truth. And I would like them to come away with that truth in a fashion that allows them to understand that the world is not perfect. People around us are not perfect. We will encounter challenges, hatred of all kinds, but love is always the thing that will pull us through. I would like them to find hope in the pages of these books. The Girls Survive series deals with a lot of really tragic and difficult situations. And I want them to know that even when those situations have racism and hatred behind them, that there are good people in all shapes, sizes, colors, and forms, and that we have to find those good people. And there are more of us than there are of the others.
That's true. When did you know that you wanted to be a writer? What turned that light bulb on for you?
I've always been a writer. As a child, I wrote stories. As a young adult in high school, I would disappear at lunch and go sit on tucked away portable stairs of the portables at my high school, and I would write poetry and stories, but I never saw myself as a writer. And I grew up and became a mom and a teacher and went on about life. And it wasn't until I was about 35 years old that I realized it was something I wanted to pursue professionally. And that was out of a desire to find something creative to do again. Teaching is creative, but writing is a completely different kind of creating. And I was craving that in my life.
Share a little bit of your writing process. Do you outline first? Do you plot and plan, or is it more organic for you?
I'm all over the place. I guess that's true of creativity, is you just never know how it's going to evolve and play out and emerge. So I do some of all of that. I am not by nature an outliner. I will get an idea, and sometimes I need to walk around with that idea. It might be my perfectionism. I'm a little bit of a perfectionist. So sometimes I don't want to commit an idea to a page until I feel like I understand that idea. So I call that process marinating in the story, and I just walk around with it and I collect ideas. When those ideas are good ones, I find that they stick. When I forget those ideas, I assume they weren't the ones that belonged in that story. And then eventually I will sit down, and those stories I tend to just write, and I write them at my own pace, and they come out and unfold in a really rough form. Some of my books have required outlining lately, especially those longer works. And so I have learned to outline. I had to teach myself and force myself to outline. And lo and behold, when you outline, you actually know where you're going in your story and you can write faster, which is important in meeting deadlines. And you can stick to the script, so to speak. So I do both.
Lena and the Burning of Greenwood is obviously a historical fiction book. Tell us about the research involved. What did you do to research for your story?
Often when I'm researching for historical fiction, or actually even for fiction, I will try to go to the setting. And that was one of the challenges of researching this book, is that setting is gone. That's the point of the stories. The setting was destroyed. So I did most of my research online, and I looked at some of everything. I love research. So with this book, I had to stop myself from researching so I could begin writing, so I didn't end up late with the book. But I looked at photographs. I feel like we see a lot in pictures, and we can learn a lot from what's in the background, from what the people are wearing. So I looked at a lot of images. I read articles. I read other books, by authors, nonfiction books by other authors. I found newspaper clippings of ads. Like I found classified ads from Greenwood, which was amazing to look at. And there were ads from the bakeries at the time. So there's a scene in the book in the beginning where the family goes into town and they stop at a bakery. And I actually had a specific bakery in mind from the research. So I find all those little tidbits. I found that I researched real people, and some of those real people I worked into the plot. There were doctors, lawyers, mechanics, business owners, hotel owners, theater owners. And it was important to me to research those people enough for them to begin to feel like my family, my aunts and uncles, my neighbors. And that is the research that allowed me to immerse myself and feel like part of the community so I could tell this story with love.
Whether it's Lena telling Lena's story or Charlotte's story or your children's book, what do you enjoy most about writing?
I love creating. I love making things up. I know that might sound really basic and rude, but it's a lot of fun to just come up with ideas. And in the drafting process, you can put anything on the paper. It might not always stay, it might change to become more realistic, but I really enjoy just letting myself go in a way that we don't always get to do in public or around others, and just have fun. So at the very basic level, that is what I love. But I also love encountering readers who have enjoyed reading something that I enjoyed creating. It creates a connection between complete strangers, and I think that's really special.
Do you get a lot of feedback from your readers, or?
I do, for the ones that are old enough to give feedback, because some of my audience is toddlers, but
Right.
Parents and elementary school readers and up, I do get feedback. And one of the things that I've noticed as a thread is that the feedback always has to do with how that reader personally connected with something in the book.
Right.
And that's my favorite part.
That's awesome. As a writer, do you have a particular space that you like to write, or do you have any habits that you adhere to when you write? Do you have to be sequestered somewhere, or do you put music in the background, or what's your writing space like?
So you're in it. Welcome to my writing space. This is my home office. So I'm sitting at my writing desk right now. I do most of my writing at my desk in this room. And I do that because I'm not good with noise. I'm one of those people who likes quiet to be able to focus. I get distracted easily. I cannot write in coffee shops. I can sometimes write in a library or somewhere that's really, really quiet. If I'm deep into a scene, I can get some of it done in a public place. But I do like to write here in the silence. I've got some sunlight coming in through a window. I have everything I need around me. My head is hiding my jar of chocolate that's it's behind me. So there's always some chocolate and maybe some tea nearby. And that's my general writing habit. I write whenever I can because I work full time, but I do my best writing in the morning. So I try to write while I'm fresh in the morning. Sometimes, creativity comes when it comes. So sometimes I'm not at my desk, or I'm not, and I will often jot ideas in the notes on my cell phone, the notes app. And I also, for longer works, I keep a journal or a small notebook. And when I'm in the middle of something, I carry that with me wherever I go, so that when ideas hit, I can write them down before I forget them.
I see. For someone who's out there and might be aspiring to be a writer, what advice would you give that person?
My first and most important advice is stick with it, keep at it, don't stop. There will be times where you're second guessing yourself, where you're doubting yourself, you're doubting your story, you don't know where you're headed. Just push through. No one ever read a book that wasn't written, right? So keep writing. That's my number one advice, is keep writing. The second thing I would say is build a writing community. Most of what I do in my life between teaching and writing is somewhat isolating as an adult. When I'm teaching, I'm almost always the only adult in the room. And when I'm writing, I'm by myself. And it's really important to have a community. So I would say find your writing people, those people who support you. They don't even have to be writers. They can be readers. They can be people who support you. And while writing is very solitary, you do not have to do it alone. So find those folks.
Okay.
And I think the last piece of advice is finish that book. Finish it.
Just finish it.
Finish it.
You mentioned earlier the library. Talk to us a little bit about the role either the public or the school library had on you as a child and now even as an adult.
I love the library. I grew up in the library, and I have really vivid memories of my elementary school library, even to this day. I grew up in Oakland, and I remember things were different then. And you could be in a classroom or a room at the school without an adult. And I remember being the only person in my elementary school library. I still remember how the light filtered in. I still remember specks of dust floating in the air, the smell of old books. There was no technology in that library.
Right.
There were card catalogs and all of that. And I remember sitting and looking at Judy Blume books and Zilpha Keatley Schneider books and just pulling things off of the shelves and really feeling like I was in my own little world. So I think that's where my love of the library started. My high school library, I would go there for solace and for safety and for peace. High school is chaotic and difficult, and we as young people are in really challenging stages of our lives. And I would go in there just to regroup. And so that was one role of my library as well. The public library in Oakland was a place where I went to do my homework. I would get on the bus after school, take the bus to that Oakland Public Library. And back in those days, we would do research on microfiche. I don't know if our viewers are going to know what microfiche is, but it was a roll of film, and you could put it in a machine and scroll through it and look at old newspapers. I still remember Mrs. Wooten, who would come into that microfiche room and make sure I was set up and that I was okay and see what I needed. And even today, I spend a lot of time in my school library where I go and check out books just like the kids. I go in there to hang out and chat with the librarian because it's my personal connection. That community I was speaking of is very much found for me in my school library. And my Mary L. Stevens branch of the Yolo County Library is a place I've taken my kids. So my children grew up in that library checking out books and at that point, videos and DVDs. And they support me as a writer, and they are an important part of our Davis community and also my community. So the library is alive in me.
Very good. So what are you currently reading for fun, just for you?
I am such a chaotic reader. I think I love books, obviously, and I'm always picking up something to read. But in the middle of that, invariably, I end up in the middle of a deadline and I've got to put it down and get my writing done. So right now I'm in the middle of The Vanishing Half, which I'm reading for fun by Britt Bennett. That's a book for adults, which I don't often read books for adults. And I'm also in the middle of Man-Made Monsters, which is young adult, sort of a historical fiction horror hybrid by Andrea L. Rogers.
Okay. Are you currently working on any new book projects?
I am. I was on a deadline yesterday. I just turned in the second draft of a middle grade novel for Scholastic. It'll be coming out hopefully in late fall of 2024. And it's called Stranded. And it's the story of a girl who survives the winter in the Adirondack Mountains after causing herself to be stranded alone.
Oh, that sounds very intriguing.
It's been fun to write.
For people who are watching this today and have never heard of Nikki Shannon Smith and would like more information about you or your books, how can they get in contact with you? Do you have a website, social media pages? Tell us how we can learn more about you.
Okay, I do have a website. I keep it fairly current. It's at nikkishannonsmith.com, so it's very easy to find. That website has a little biographical information about my books, a way to contact me through a contact page, upcoming events, and how I do my author visits. So that's a great place, just a landing spot for everything about me. I'm also on social media. You can find me on Twitter at Nikki2Smith. You can find me on Instagram as Nikki Shannon Smith. You can find my Facebook page, which is just Nikki Shannon Smith author. In general, if you Google Nikki Shannon Smith, it will take you to all 4 of those spots.
Nikki, it has been a pleasure talking with you today. Again, the title of the book is Lena and the Burning of Greenwood, a Tulsa Race Massacre Survival Story. Again, winning the 2023 Oklahoma Book Award for Young Adult Readers. Nikki, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you so much, Connie, for taking the time to speak with me. And thank you again for the honor of that award, and to all of the people behind everything, all book things happening in Oklahoma.